Dr. Rippy, thank you very much for coming by. This is not the Antiques Roadshow, but it's a little bit like that.
Right.
I know you brought some photographs in today. I'd just like to ask you a couple questions. Can you tell me what I'm looking at here? It looks like a steam engine.
That's an old steam engine. I think it was a replica that the North Carolina Railroad built of it. And it came through here about 1933.
Mm-hmm.
And my uncle, Lingo Cobb, made a picture of it. And as I recall, you could ride to Burlington in one of these cars for 10 cents.
All right, like an excursion.
Yeah.
Okay. Who are these people in the picture?
That's Petey Boyles, and that's me.
You're running second place. I see.
Well, actually, we were walking. We wasn't running because it was sitting still.
That's even
And we
better
were
yet.
walking down to the front of it.
Do you have any idea about where this picture was taken? I mean, it's in town or somewhere? Where?
Yeah, it was taken just below the depot, the old depot. They cleared the cross and it was sitting down there. Back in here is where the big house sits down, you know, that's been
This is about where the
remodeled.
caboose is now, would you say, sort of in that area? About?
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, then I was going to ask you the next question. You brought this other photograph in, which looks like an aerial picture
Yes.
of what?
Yes, and I got this from, let's see, who did I get that from? Anyway, I scanned the picture he had and got this, and I think he got it from Mr. Davison, the picture that he had. But this is made, the mill's back this way. This is looking towards where the ballpark used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an outlay that they drew across where they were going to put the underpass. But as I understand it, they didn't put it there. They came down here and put it across this way. They come up this way and then went down Main Street, because that's the chair factory that Mr. Overman had here.
Right here, this
right
one.
there.
About where on this picture would Kimber's be? Kimber's restaurant?
It would be over here on the other side of Main Street.
About here someplace. So
Yeah.
Main Street would be back about there.
Right.
Now, there's one picture you brought that showed me, I know it was from a newspaper that will remain nameless right now, but actually it says the Times News, if there's anybody here from the Times News. If not, too bad. The picture, I was curious about this picture, a gentleman on a horse.
Yeah, well, that's Mr. Peach Apple.
All right.
And he was in the Revolutionary War, and he fought at the Battle of Gettysburg, and he would come over at times and talk to us children in the school about the Civil War. In his later years, he'd walk up the sidewalk with his walking cane. He'd stop and raise up his walking cane. He said, "Ready, aim, fire." And he'd walk on up the street, reliving the days he was in the Civil War.
That's where Apple Street come from.
Right.
I was going to ask you about that. So Apple
Yes,
Street
Apple
is
Street's
his name,
named
right?
after that, because he had a wood yard. He sold wood
Mhm.
across the street from where his house was.
So about how old do you think he was when he came to your school? I mean, you're not that old, but he was pretty old.
80s.
Is in the
Well, he was in the Civil War, so he probably was
18 to 16.
18 or so when he went
He
to
must have
the
been in his
Civil War.
80s when he came to your school.
And, oh yeah, because he was an old man when he came over to
I
school.
mean, for somebody that was in the Civil War that lived to 80 years old is rather,
Yeah,
unusual.
Yeah.
And then this, who's this picture?
This is Dr. Joyner, who, his house was over there next to the Methodist Church, and it's
Mhm.
been torn down.
Right.
And
And what did he do in town? What was
he was a
Joy?
doctor as well as a builder. He
Oh.
built the brick buildings that Huffine Store was in, and
Mhm.
Burke Store.
All right. Was his the office that was upstairs?
No, his office was behind the building that Burke Store was in. I guess about where Burke used to have what they called a You Save It store in the back that opened up on Lewis Street.
Right.
And I think that's where his office was.
What would you save at the You Save It store?
It was a grocery
A
store.
grocery store. You save money at the grocery
Yeah,
store.
right.
Clever name. Now here's an athletic group, and it
Yeah.
looks like 1941, 42.
42.
Anybody we know here?
Yes, I think this is the Collins
Collins
boy. That's Paul Boyles. That's Pete Murray. And that's Hoyt Gillum. That's Frank Apple. That's Clarence Blaylock. That's Mr. Shepherd, who was the coach, and that's Jordan Curtis.
Now, where did they play basketball in 1942? Where was the basketball arena?
It was in the chapel part of the old school building,
Right,
in the stage part.
on the stage,
Right.
which meant it was about a half a court game or so?
Well, it's a pretty good sized
Yeah,
stage
okay.
there.
Now, this other picture, to be equal opportunity for a moment, it looks like there's a women's basketball team of a year we won't mention because there might be some people in the audience who recognize themselves in these pictures. Why
Yeah.
don't you tell us who these people are?
Well, I'll start in the front row. This is my wife, Helen Blaylock, Beulah Benson, Jackie Woodburn, and
Lorraine,
who?
Lorraine Tuttle,
Rolling Tuttle. And
Back row?
this is
Darcy.
Darcy Henry. She's here. That's Trevor Pettigrew. That's Kitty Rook. And that's, who is this here?
Is it Nancy Reese?
No.
One of the twins, as you say.
Kitty Rook.
Well, what I want to do is, if you don't mind, will the women's basketball team please come up?
Hazel
Hazel Apple.
Would you
May.
just come on up here for a minute?
That's Nancy.
And bring the rest of your teammates with you. Come on,
You're welcome.
come on. If you wouldn't mind just standing here beside Dr. Rippy.
Uh-huh.
And that's Paul Moore.
And the same over there too, because I think that's where the camera's now. Is this the entire team?
Now,
Is-
this one is deceased, she's still living, so, and this one's deceased, we don't know about this one, and she's deceased.
Well, what was your record for a basketball team? Were
We
you
had
good?
pretty good record.
Were you good?
We weren't so good, but we were good.
Who'd you play against?
County school,
County schools, all right?
and we played, different county schools, but we also played Altamont, Ossipee, and Elon.
All right. Now, who was the tallest member on the team?
Libya was one of the
Back.
Well,
oldest
she,
ones.
And she's not on there.
Another one, that's right.
Nancy and Doris probably were the tall, and Woodburn was. She and I were about the shortest.
That means you played guard?
We played forward.
Forward?
We like to score.
I see, I see.
We like to have points.
Two-handed shots. Well, and by the way, it was 1939. You must have been very young to be in high school at that time.
Oh, I was. But I tell you, girls' basketball was not like it is now. You played on one end of the court,
Right?
and then you played on the other end.
Oh,
You
okay.
didn't go up and down the court.
Well, that sounds like more fun.
It was.
More time for commercials. Well, thank you for coming by,
Thank
because we've
you.
got one other picture we want to take a look at. And that's the, I'm not sure, it looks like a fire truck.
Uh-huh.
Any idea about what year this is?
1953, I think, when this was made.
Okay, and about where?
And this was
where are
the
we?
third fire truck.
All right,
The first fire truck was a T-model Ford, and the other fire truck was a fire truck that the city bought from Greensboro. And Carl Allen kept it over in his garage until they could finish this here and move it over to the city hall.
now, the folks that are in this picture, you recognize anybody?
Yes, that's Bob Walters, Matthew Foster, Mr. Bill Boone, Lingle Cobb, Ed Billings, and Harold Cates.
Is Ed here today?
You hear the-
Miss Belvin? Come on down. Watch your step right there, that wire's all over the place. This is Mr. Eddie Belvin, right?
Yeah.
B-E-L-V-I-N. The newspaper had his name spelled wrong. We won't name the newspaper this time, but it is B-E-L-V-I-N. And is that you at the end of that photograph right there?
That's you?
It's himself.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to figure out then, this says muscular dystrophy. Was that a particular problem here? Why were they raising money for muscular dystrophy? Is there something?
Why were they raising money for muscular dystrophy?
There were, but I was just trying to think. This is 1950s. I was thinking polio was a big problem at that
Yeah.
time, but not muscular dystrophy. Where was Town Hall before it was here?
It was up over Beeman Taylor store.
Which is across the main
Right
street.
next to the drugstore.
Old drugstore.
The old drugstore.
drugstore, yeah.
And when was this, do you think, when did they move into this building?
I'm not exactly sure when they moved.
1930s?
30s, early 30s.
All right. Now, I was curious about, just wanted a picture over here. Thank you, Eddie, appreciate you coming by. Glad to see you.
Oh,
Appreciate
by
it.
the way,
Oh.
he's the oldest living member of the fire department.
The oldest living member of the fire department. Well, we need to talk to Clarence about that. Get you on the new fire truck. Nice, thanks for coming by. We've got one other picture, which I think is another mode of transportation in Gibsonville.
Yeah.
Who are these people and what are they doing?
Well, this is my grandfather and my great-grandfather. This is W.R. Cobb and this is Boss Cobb. And this was this Liberty Stables, which was on Lewis Street and along in there where Boone Furniture and all those buildings are there now. And he had the whole back area. See, the main street didn't run where it runs now, so he had that whole back area to keep his horses and mules and buggies and wagons in.
If I understand this right, let's do this picture. Main Street didn't used to go all the way through?
No, Main Street went across the railroad and run down in front of the mill. as
Okay,
you
there's
see
the
it
mill,
here.
all right.
And this is the railroad track. And you can see some of the roses there. And so, and the drugstore here, it did not run down in front of the drugstore, these other buildings, because there's a tree right there in the middle of what the street would be now.
So this is the corner of Piedmont and Main Street, you think?
No, this is the corner of Main Street, yeah, and Piedmont.
Piedmont, right. So we're looking back this way towards,
Railroad track.
that way, I understand. And then, of course, across the railroad tracks was the mill.
It was the mill, and you come down in front of the mill. There's the road that it runs. See, that was before that other
Right.
photograph that you
Now,
had.
tell me about the roses. What roses? I don't see any roses now.
Well, when the Cones bought the mill from Mr. Barry Davis, and so they had roses planted all along the fence, and they were there for a long time. I remember being there, and that's where the city got its name of City of Roses. People traveling on trains saw all these pretty roses
In front of the mill?
in front of the mill.
All right,
Yeah,
no longer.
yeah, and
Well, Dr. Rippy, I appreciate you coming by.
okay.
I know you've got 10,000 more stories, and we'll give some other folks a chance to talk
Okay.
about their stories too. Thanks
Okay.
very much.
Uh-huh.